My name is Moriel, and I'm going to talk to you about Nocalization, how the industry gets localization wrong, and what you can do about it. So let's talk a minute about what localization is. Localization is a lot of things, but it boils down to making sure that the user using your product feels like it was meant for them. Localization goes hand in hand with internationalization and accessibility, and the boundaries between these is getting smaller and smaller and tighter as we move towards a global world, and the definitions of what we see as accommodating and looking at people's desires and preferences gets wider. And localization isn't just about language. It could be your time zone, your terminology that you use, the script that you use, all of the things around cultural expectations from anyone that's using any sort of product. But we tend to consider localization as locale, which is kind of a mix between culture and geography. And this leads us to, how do we do localization nowadays? Nowadays, most applications use geography in order to decide what kind of experience to send to their users. This means that if you're in some country, a lot of times a product online will assume that you speak the native language that is spoken in country A, and that your currency choice is the one in country A, and that your time zone is country A, and perhaps your holiday decisions. This might work for many people, but is this really the way that we work today all over the world? Maybe not. In today's world, people travel. They have a lot more flexibility to decide where they are, where they work from. They work remotely. There are families with multilingual people. There are families that move around. There are people who choose to live in other places and still retain a lot of their culture and preferences from their original country or more. On top of that, relying on a single choice chooses all is even worse. If I choose some locale, I tend to get everything that has to do with that locale, not just the language, but also the currency and time zone and all the holidays, etc., etc., etc. And it's kind of like a one-fit-all kind of thing. It's very difficult to find online places that allow you to pick and choose. And this is actually kind of impactful. To give you an example, I am multilingual. For the most part, I prefer to read long-form text in my maiden language. But I took my degrees here in the United States, which means that when I read technical information, I prefer to read it in English because I recognize the terminology. But it's really difficult for me to decide to switch around between one language to the other depending on context. Most software online kind of assume that if you chose a language, that's it. Or if you chose your location, that's it. If you chose the way that you do it, it's only one way or the other. And so getting into all these settings and preferences behind to change one is not as simple as it is. So why should you even care about this? This is a question I hear a lot. And to be fair, there are products out there that don't need to be international. And if your product is one of those, then maybe you shouldn't care that much about translations. Maybe. But you should consider that regardless of what kind of audience you're targeting, even if the audience is very specific in a certain area or in a certain culture, you still have a lot of people nowadays that have a little bit of a mixed experience, and you should support them. If users overall use your product and don't feel like they belong, they feel like everything is overhead to use it, they won't. They will just go and look for something else. And if they don't have a choice, if this is the only thing out there, first of all, that's temporary. And second of all, they'll just use it when they need to and not use it otherwise. It's very, very crucial to start getting people to love your software rather than just use it. And to be honest, it's kind of annoying to get used to a really good product and then have all the functionality suddenly change on you just because you took a trip outside of the country. So geography doesn't cut it anymore. Well, what does? How can you make your users feel like your product was meant for them regardless where they are or what their expectations are? It sounds very, very grand and big. And it can be. The first thing you should do is realize this isn't easy. Localization is a big topic, and there's a lot of resources online that talk about all the things from the big to the very, very small. It's not a very clear solution. There's no one solution solves all. It really depends what your product is doing and what it needs to do. But if you recognize that there's a problem and you identify it and you care about it, that is definitely the first step. There are certain principles that you can follow to make the experience a lot easier for your users. Try to avoid making assumptions that are generalizing the people that you're aiming at. Not all people who speak French are necessarily in France, and not all people who speak French maybe want to pay with the French currency. They might want to pay with the US dollar. Try to give your users a little bit more of an option for what they want to do. Try to give people the flexibility to choose where and which options fits their experience. And this is how you can create a product that people actually stick to and people feel is inclusive to them and take their experiences into account, which is the point here. This is the true essence of localization. Watch out from assuming something is an edge case. As we're talking right now, the world is changing. People are changing their behaviors, and the separation between cultures and languages is not as clear as perhaps it used to be. Yesterday's edge cases may not be the edge cases today. If you are rejecting an edge case, you might actually reject a lot more users than you think you do. Always listen to your users. This sounds repetitive, but it is true. Listen, ask your users, and try to identify where their needs are met. There are very, very small things you can do that won't cost you very much, that will give your users a wonderful experience, thinking that this was meant exactly for them, and this is what you want, for them to continue using your product. So welcome to the new paradigm of the internet, where location doesn't really matter anymore, and we should stop pretending like it does. The biggest impact you can make is listening to your users, considering localization as a practice, and be the change we want to see on the internet. Be a localizer, not a nocalizer. Thanks for watching.